Hello and welcome to the Blueprint Review podcast, a monthly chat about a wide range of films, new or old, popular or obscure, focusing largely but not exclusively on physical media, much like the website itself. So, I mentioned anyone who listened to last month's show will remember that I said I was thinking of doing something a bit different for the next show. As I also mentioned then, my wife and kids have gone away for a week. They're going to see the in-laws in Finland. And which means I've been home alone. I've had work to do in the week, but not too much, which has meant without my kind of parental responsibilities, without having to do bedtime routines and all this kind of nonsense, making dinner and all this kind of stuff, I've had loads of free time, which is awesome. So I have absolutely filled it with getting through this mess of an unwatched film collection. I was determined. I tried to keep my review slate clean. I did watch 2 review screeners in the end though, because I was trying to get ahead of myself because I'm going on holiday soon as well with the girls. Yeah. So I did watch a couple of review films. I won't mention those because they're going to go up on the site soon. And also, the very first weekend, I did the weekend of trash. So I had Justin, Andrew, and Bill all came over, and we watched loads of films. It was awesome. I'm not going to talk about those films because I've done a post on the site, but check that out. But that was that kickstarted my week of my bachelor week, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. So that was a brilliant kickstart. We went straight into it. But from then, I've tried to kind of just watch films in my collection, really. I did go to the cinema once as well and watch Longlegs, which is cool. Yes. But I'm going to stick to the discs, I think, tonight.
We should mention a bit of Longlegs.
We could get to Longlegs, actually. We could quickly chat about Longlegs. I'm going to cheat a little bit. What I also did as well is because, as I say, I've got so many unwatched discs, it was hard to choose what to watch. I don't know anyone else who has a big collection. Half the time is wasted just trying to figure out what to watch. So what I actually did was I put on Facebook, on my own Facebook feed, whatever you call it, and also on the Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema group. I posted on there a kind of a short list of films in categories. I'm very nerdy. I couldn't resist. Well, it's because I kind of wanted to watch a range of stuff. If I just put a random list of things, everyone had kind of picked the well-known classics. So I narrowed it down to categories, and I kind of asked people, what are your recommendations? What should I be watching from this list of movies? And I got a lot of responses. I got loads of responses. So what I've actually tried to do is for the most part, I have kind of stuck with anything that got a couple of recommendations, really, or there's 1 or 2 that only had 1 recommendation. And there's 1 wildcard film in which we'll get to. And also there's 1 where I switched them round from what was recommended to something by the same director, which I'll get to later. Okay. Cool. So the first thing I watched, actually, and this is cheating a little bit because I actually watched this on Thursday before the girls went. I had a free like hour or so in the evening whilst Anna was packing. I thought I'll get out of her hair and I will watch something from the list. So I thought I'm just going to jump in there. And there was some very short old comedies, and I went with a Laurel and Hardy film. Also because I'm going to be reviewing the Eureka. Oh, Laurel and Hardy. I can't say it. Laurel and Hardy short. The silent short. Sorry, I'm going to be reviewing those soon. But I haven't actually seen a lot of Laurel and Hardy films. I've seen a few like ages ago. So I thought I'll give myself a reminder of what their talkie films are like, so I know what I'm talking about. So what I watched, I don't think this was actually on the list, but because I didn't have much time, it was quite late, and I picked like the shortest film in the box set that I've got that was supposed to be good, and I watched a Chump at Oxford. So this kicked off my video weekend in a bit of a random style. Yeah, so a lot, kind of typical Laurel and Hardy film. They just get into lots of trouble and all this kind of jazz at Oxford. At the university, and it's got quite an amusing kind of final act because it's Laurel, that's it. Yeah, but Stan Laurel, he gets whacked. There's someone working at the university mistakes him from someone else. Well, they seem to mistake him for someone else. They reckon he's this lord or something who used to be at the university, and he gets banged on the head. When he gets banged on the head, he becomes this other person. So you get the idea that actually he was this person, but he totally changes because obviously Stan Laurel usually is a bit cool. He's like a bit of a weedy. He's a bit useless, a bit stupid. But suddenly he's really intelligent. He's very well spoken, and he sounds British all of a sudden. And so it's got quite a nice ending to it, where he's bossing all the Hardy around, which is obviously it's usually the other way around. So it's got a nice ending to it. Yeah, it was amusing. It's an easy watch. I wouldn't say it's hilarious. I tend to lean more towards some of the silent kind of heroes more than Oliver Hardy, Laurel and Hardy. I tend to go more for the big Buster Keaton guy. What I've seen of Harold Lloyd, I love a lot. I need to watch more. And Charlie Chaplin. And I don't know if Laurel and Hardy are quite in that league.
Yeah.
It didn't help it that there was this really annoying music bed through the whole film as well, which kind of bothered me. But it was fun. It was okay. It's not. I enjoyed it. It's decent, but not a classic. Have you watched many Laurel and Hardy?
No. It's one of my big blind spots. Like the whole like silent cinema, but also like some of the talky like early comedies. I'm still like it's a huge blind spot for me. I feel like I jump into all of this like scuzzy like 80s stuff way more than like the classics. I really need to get around to seeing some of the like actual classics. But no, I haven't seen any. But I my family's like a huge fan of Laurel and Hardy and stuff like that. Yeah.
I've been getting more into a lot of classic Hollywood stuff. I didn't watch. I watched some of the big name stuff, but it's more in recent years. I've been really digging further, and there's so much fun stuff out there. Oh. One thing, if you want to try some earlier comedy stuff, what I would recommend is some of the Marx Brothers ones, especially like Duck Soup, and Night of the Opera.
Arrow released those, didn't
they? Yeah.
They did like a four film box set.
Yeah, the ones that Arrow released, they're some of the best. But the Marx Brothers ones, they're easygoing because it's talky. Because some of the silent comedy is a bit more of a you need to kind of vibe with it. It's not for everyone's taste.
Yeah.
But the Marx Brothers ones, it's very witty, very funny, very silly. They always have big epic musical numbers, which out to everyone. But I love them. I'd recommend giving them a try.
Absolutely. I'll pick that up. I think the Arrow sale's still going on, so maybe after the stream, after the podcast, see if that's in the sale.
Yeah, it might be the last day. I'm not sure. But yeah. Anyway, and then so that was the Thursday. Then after that, I had the video weekend, and I squeezed in one of my review films, and I squeezed in my Longlegs. So we can quickly talk about Longlegs. Yes. I helped my brother move house. On the Tuesday, and we messed up the removal van. We didn't bring it back on time, so we ended up having to stay over in Boston because we couldn't leave the van anywhere, so I had to stay over. But his house was empty, so we just stayed in a hotel in Boston, his random hotel, and so we just said, well, let's just get to the cinema. There's not much else to do, so we went and watched Longlegs. Yeah, I liked it a lot. I know it's been a little bit divisive, and I can totally see that. I think it's got I think the big thing I think that can probably put some people off, and I found it quite unusual, but I didn't mind it, is how kind of cold the lead character is.
Yeah.
But I feel, I mean, I don't want to spoil the film too much, but when you find out more about her past, I guess it makes a little more sense about why she might not be quite so warm and normal.
No, completely. Yeah, like I
expected it.
Yeah, I loved the film, and I even saw it twice in the cinema. I went back to see it, which is something I rarely do for films, but I was just like, I want to see it. Now that I know where this is going, again, spoiler free, of course, but now that I knew where it was going, I kind of wanted to like watch it a second time with the knowledge, of where everything was going. And there are little like seeds that are planted that make way more sense when you watch it on a rewatch. Just like you can pick up little character traits, and obviously with some things that are revealed in the third act, it kind of makes more sense as to why Lee, I think Lee is the lead character's name, Lee Harker, is why she's so kind of cold and off, and it is. I can completely understand why that would be so divisive for so many people, because it is kind of like it's not a very like charismatic lead performance, but at the same time I wouldn't really want that, because like bouncing off of, which we'll probably get to in a moment, I'm sure, the antagonist in the film, who is on the complete other end of the spectrum in terms of the performance. If you want to actually, you take the lead.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess that is the other thing that could be divisive. Is I don't. Is it a spoiler to say who the bad guy is? Because
no, he's all over. He's over.
But yeah, but basically, it's Nick Cage. Nick Cage is Longlegs, and it is a wild performance. I mean, it's Nick Cage. What do you expect? And yeah, I can definitely see some people being like, "What the hell is going on here?" But I don't know. I just think, especially when contrasting with the kind of coldness of a heroine, it's it just worked for me. I think the whole film is it's so atmospheric. It's not it wasn't necessarily as scary as the trailer made out. I was expecting super scary like horrors jumping out and all this kind of stuff. It's not. It's much more of a under your skin kind of creepy.
Yeah.
It was all about the atmosphere for me, and I just loved it. I guess the other thing people, and again, I don't want to spoil it. The other thing that people might not like is kind of the direction it goes in the end. To a less grounded kind of. It becomes less grounded and becomes a bit more fantastical. And but again, I didn't mind that. I think it made it more interesting. I liked it. I liked that it took a risk and did something different and just went out there. And for me, it felt. I mean, it's definitely got influences from other films, but it still felt fresh. And it just grabbed me and just didn't let go. I just couldn't take my eyes away from it. I loved it.
100%. Like when you were saying influences, everyone's throwing out Silence of the Lambs because obviously police procedural type, like all of that stuff, like connection. I guess like potential connection with the killer. I'll just be very light, like stuff like that. But the one that really stood out to me, and I wrote a review and highlighted this one. I don't know if you'd agree. Cure was like the big one for me in terms of how, like you said, it's not like in your face like jump scare galore, like gory or anything like that. It's this like under your skin kind of like just uncomfortable atmosphere that's present. And even in like some of the scariest sequences in Cure for me are just two characters speaking more or less. It's not, there's nothing like graphic being said, nothing graphic, like violence on screen. It's just like oh no, this is horrible. I can sense, I can feel where this is going. Or even worse, you don't know where it's going, and you're like, oh, what's going on? And I feel like it's one of the few films since I watched Cure that really kind of gets that like under my skin scary, which I think is way more scary than like some like CGI ghost jumping out at you or something.
Jump scares do really.
And I will say the film has its fair share of jump scares, but I think they're good jump scares. They're kind of like I think a lot of people give a lot of flack to jump scares, deservedly so if they're cheap and lazy. But there are really great instances of them, like Exorcist 3. Have you seen Exorcist 3?
I've not, but I've seen the bit. I've seen that moment.
Yeah, that bit is amazing. And I'm like, and it's just such a great, like, kind of like setup, payoff, and it goes on for so long. I won't spoil it for people who haven't seen Exorcist 3, but it probably has the greatest jump scare in like horror. So I feel like there's some really good ones. I love the title card. I won't say anything else, but I love the kind of cut to title card. That's great. But I love Cage in it. I'm one of the people who thinks he's probably the greatest living actor. Unironically, I really love the man. I think he can. I'd argue he can do no wrong, and I think it's more sort of the projects around him that sometimes let him down. But he's always fearless, always committed. And
I think in the last few years, I think he's been picking some really good stuff though. He had a terrible phase where he was just
the director,
but just to pay the bills. But I think he's kind of. He's now that he's got a bit more respect in the last couple of years. He's been picking decent projects. He's been in some really good stuff. Yeah, and that's another reason why I like him. He's picking good films now, which is great.
Yeah, no, I did you see Pig? He's amazing in Pig.
I haven't seen that. I keep meaning to see that. Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah, it's Pig's great. Mandy's great.
Mandy.
I'm trying to think what else recently. I like him in Color Out of Space. I think he's pretty fun in that. And I really liked Mum and Dad. I think Mum and Dad. Mum and Dad. Yes, I love Mum and Dad. That's so much fun. A few more years ago, maybe, but not that long. That was 2017, 2018. That's still like fairly recent, I'd say. That's great, kind of like crazy Cage. I'm a big fan of that. And I want to see that film that just came out recently. I got like an ad for it at the cinema, like a trailer. Arcadian. I think it's like a post-apocalyptic horror movie with him, and I'm like, oh, that could be pretty good, maybe. But yeah, no, he's been on a roll recently, and I'm so glad because he's been talking about like he's only got a few more films left in him. He might retire, and I'm like, if Longlegs is one of his last performances, he's going out on a high, especially with like some of the recent stuff. But yeah, Longlegs is amazing. Go see it if you haven't already. That one, it's worth going to the cinema for. Like, especially with like the audio in particular. Like, I don't know if it was the same in your like theater or anything, but the audio mix was amazing for me. And
I was really surprised by the cinema. Actually, I was in Boston. I don't know if you know Boston at all, but it's no offense to people from Boston. It's not got the best reputation as a town, and it yeah, and we went to, and it was the Savoy Cinema, and I don't really have any Savoys recently. I don't really know what they're like, and I just kind of I thought, oh, a small town, it's not going to, well, it's not a tiny town, but it's a town rather than a city, I guess. And I thought I wasn't expecting much, but I don't know if all cinemas are like this, but it was in one of these deluxe VIP rooms or something. It was amazing. You had like reclining electric seats and
yes,
loads of leg room. And I'm a 6'2". I need leg room.
Yes, no, I'm the same way. Yeah,
it was a really nice cinema, so I had a good experience.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I just went to my local. Like we got it like 3-4 months ago, and I really love the new cinema because like we used to have like an Odeon, but it was getting on. Like they hadn't changed the seats in forever. Like I think I usually do like tags for my letterbox films, and I think once I caught The Matrix there, and it was like Odeon seats are the most uncomfortable seats ever, and I started using that tag whenever I saw something at Odeon because I was like, oh, it's so painful. But yeah, the new seats there are great, and the audio mix, and but yeah, no, Longlegs, amazing. Almost my film of the year. Like it was my film of the year, and then I rewatched Challengers, and I was like, no, Challengers is my film of the year.
Longlegs is up there for me. I think there's quite a few. As usual, there's some that I can't talk about yet because I watch these early exhibitor screenings that I'm never allowed to talk about. So
you'll get to eventually.
Yeah. But cool. But yeah, after the cinema trip, then I settled down and just watched loads of movies. I went crazy. I watched a lot. So I'm going to try and be quick. I've already spent way too long on those two films. Cool. So I tried to balance it up. I've got some big classics and some just kind of fun stuff, but quite a few classics, more than I expected. But yeah, first up was a biggie that a lot of people nominated on Facebook. So I was like, I'm going to have to do it. And that is Cleo from 5 to 7. Agnes Varda film, which is basically all it is about is a woman she's a singer, and she is waiting for test results from the doctors, and she thinks she might have cancer, and she's waiting to hear the results to see what it is, and that's it. She's just waiting for that through the day, but she kind of wanders around the city and back home and in and out and again, and meets different people, and it's just about those interactions with different people. But I've seen a couple of Agnes Varda films, and they've all been really good, but this was amazing. I adored it. I can totally see why it's way up there on I think the Sight and Sound poll is top 10. I think recently, maybe. I'm not sure.
Okay,
it's amazing. It's hard to put into words. It's just it kind of beautifully captures life, like through the different interactions with the different people.
Yeah,
brings out so much humanity. It's just intoxicating to watch. It also kind of says a lot about womanhood, really, and women in general, and the way people treat her. So a big kind of thing in the film is that people don't take her seriously because she's not just because she's a woman, but in particular she's an attractive woman. She's she's a singer, and people just kind of see her ditzy blonde, and they don't take her that seriously. They think, oh, she's just being a hypochondriac. They're not really listening to her, and that's kind of one of the things in the film. She wants someone to speak to, and she has loads of friends. Everyone's nice to her, but they're not listening to her, and that's the kind of a big thing in the film as well. And it's but it's done subtly, it's done beautifully, and it's a lot of fun as well. It's just got an energy to it. There's loads of movement in the camera, and the cast moving around. There's brilliant use of music in there. There's an amazing kind of show-stopping song bit in the middle where she not like a musical type where she just randomly breaks out in song. She's a singer, but her kind of composer and arranger come to her house, and she does a song, and it's just a total stops everything moment that's amazing. And yeah, I've seen some really good films this week, and this is up there. This is one of the 5-star. Like, yeah, I can't recommend it enough.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. But yeah,
I need to dive into some. Sorry for interrupting. Just then. No, I was just gonna say I need to dive into Agnes Varda's stuff. I know she's made so many films that I just haven't seen, but how you're describing it sounds like two films I absolutely love. It sounds like Jeanne Dielman, and it sounds like the Before movies almost, like in terms of like Before Sunset, Before Sunrise, stuff like that, where it's just kind of like we're spending time with these people in real time as they're just interacting with other human beings, and I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff, like the slice of life type thing. And I'm a sucker for stuff like that.
It kind of. I mean, I'm not seeing Jeanne Dielman, but in terms of from the Before films, it's with Before, it's mainly just those two characters. I mean, they do interact with some other people, but this is I would say this is easier to watch because she interacts with lots of different people. There's there's quite a different dynamic in these different scenes. Because I must admit, I mean, because I always found I always get them mixed up as to which one, but I always found the first Before film, because I've only seen them once. The first Before film, I actually struggled with it. I kind of appreciate it. I didn't, but I found it a bit slow. I found it a bit, but the second, it was one of those films where the second film that I loved it, and it made me appreciate the first film more. But this one just, I would say this is easier to watch than those. It's more, it's more kind of fun. But also very touching by the end. You just need to watch it. It's amazing.
Does this have like a UK Blu-ray? Like, has anyone put it out over here?
Well, there's the you might have to buy the collection. Ooh, I'm not sure. I think you can usually pick it up pretty cheap though, and almost all the films in here are like highly regarded. I've not seen, the only others I've seen from this one are La Pointe Court, her first film, which I liked a lot. A Vagabond, which is that's quite depressing, but it's really good. I've heard Gleaners of Eye is supposed to be incredible, but I've not seen that. But yeah, it's worth picking up.
Yeah, no, I'd love to pick it up. I think there might be a Criterion set as well of some of the films, but I don't think it's available over
here. I've seen Faces Places too as well. That's fun. That's a lot of fun. It's a documentary that she's done. That's very good.
Awesome. I need to dive into her stuff. I've got so many of these filmmakers that I'm just like, I know of their work, but I just haven't dived in yet.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's just so much to watch. That's what I've realized. I must admit, doing this kind of, not really a challenge, but doing this week of just blitzing my collection, it's made me realize two things. It's like I need to stop buying for a while. I've got so many amazing films here that I've not seen. There's like there's about 3 or 4 5-star films in here that I've just been sat on my shelf for years, and it just showed me like, just sit and watch your films, David. The other thing is I need to calm down with reviewing stuff and spend more time with this, because there's so much quality stuff here. Although the review stuff, I get so much good.
I think that's why I'm loving reviewing so much, because like I pick a lot of titles that I've seen before that I kind of want to check. Oh, how's the 4K look or something? But I'm also using it as an opportunity to check out some of these films. I'm like, do I really want to spend like £40 on a blind buy that's just going to sit on my shelf for ages? Or I actually have like an incentive to like check it out and like get a review out, and like I don't know. I think that's kind of why I use that. But at the same time, I look at my shelves and I'm like, there's thousands of films there that I still need to see.
But yeah, I'm the same. I mean, I'd never stop reviewing. I do like it, and I think, as you say, it does force you to watch things that as you say, it forces me to take a chance on things. And also there's a lot of the films that I review I would probably buy, but they'd sit on the shelf for years. And the more obscure stuff, because what usually often happens is I get something offered to review, something's announced, and I look it up online and think, oh, that sounds great. But if it's not something that's super well known, and it just gets put on the shelf, like a couple of years later when I finally get around to it, I've forgotten what the hype was about it. And so I think it's nice to just see it and get a screener, and just it forces you to sit down and watch them.
Yes,
it forces me to work through the special features and really appreciate it as well. And cool. But still, this week has made me realize I need to get through some of this stuff, because there's some absolute beautiful, amazing films in it. So next, speaking of great films, the next film is Stalag 17.
Okay,
this is Billy Wilder film. Is setting a prison camp. during World War II. Yeah, it's and it's all about I should be looking at it's William Holden is in the camp, and he's he deals a lot with all the prison guards, all the Nazi guards and things. He does a lot of deals, and so he gets loads of stuff. He's very kind of sharp with it. But what happens is that after some escape attempts go wrong, and some things that they've got in Stalag 17, which is like the kind of compound, the building that they're in. There's loads of guys in this same building. A lot of things keep going wrong, and like a lot of the things they're hiding there keep getting found out by the guards. So everyone assumes that there is a mole. There is someone in there who is feeding information to the Nazis, and obviously because William Holden keeps getting loads of cool free stuff from the Nazis because he's trading with them, they assume it's him. So the film kind of goes on from there, that everyone loses trust in him, but he wants to find out who, because you realize it's not him. He wants to find out who is supplying this information. He kind of finds it out, and it goes on from there. This is another great film. It's Billy Wilder. So as you might expect, although it's a prisoner of war film, it does have a lot of some dark stuff in there. You know, there's some of the right from the start, the two of the guys trying to escape and they're shot dead. But with it being Billy Wilder, there is a lot of humor in there. There's not just dark humor, but some quite broad humor in there. And the balance for the most part is excellent. I think we talked about on a previous podcast about how even serious subject matter, you need that kind of humor.
Yes.
If you were stuck with a load of soldiers in this prison camp for months, years, or whatever, you would have to joke around and enjoy yourself. It's all you can do without going crazy.
Yeah.
And it kind of gets this across quite nicely, whilst also having quite a tense and quite a gripping kind of story about finding out who this mole is. The only problem is, though, it stops me from being this like a. I almost wanted this to be a 5-star like classic. I love Billy Wilder, and it was for the most part, it's up there. But there's just two characters that really let it down. But yeah, there's two characters who are just pure comic relief, and it's just too much. They're just way over the top, and they're just really silly, and it just doesn't really fit. And every time they're on screen, they're kind of grating. And from what I gather, they were, because it's based on a stage play, the film. They were some of the actors who performed in the original stage play, and they were brought in. A lot of the other cast I think a couple of other people came from the stage play, but like William Holden, he's a film actor. He was brought on to be in the film, but these guys came from the stage, and I think their kind of comedy hijinks, it just doesn't settle that well, and it's a bit frustrating because the rest of the film is so good. But it's still fantastic. I would absolutely recommend everyone to see it. It's just that minor annoyance. Without them, it would be a 5-star absolute cast iron, but they're just a little bit annoying.
Who released it? I'm gonna ask you after every title who released it.
Some of them you'll be disappointed. This will be your DVD, but this was a Eureka release though.
Okay.
It's one that the films on my list, most of the films on my list are films that I've had for ages. But there's a few that aren't. There's a few like, actually I've not had Cleo from 5 to 7 that long. Some of them are just mega classics that I want to see.
Yeah.
But with Stalag 17, I had it on DVD for a long time, but I bought the Blu-ray fairly recently. It was on sale or something, and I just assumed it would look loads nicer and it had extra features and all this kind of stuff. So I upgraded. But it's well worth a watch.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'd love to check that out.
Yeah, no worries. Next one. So next one is Speed Racer. Mentioned this one. So yeah, Speed Racer. It's I won't describe the plot of these films all too much, but Speed Racer. It's just it is about a young racer set in some sort of weird futuristic kind of world, and he's kind of an underdog story. He's part of a family race team. His brother used to be one of the best racers, but he died, and so this young racer is starting to work towards the top. He gets offered a sponsorship from this mega rich kind of guy, this corporation, but he turns it down. Says no, I want to be a family run business. And you realize that this corporation was super evil, so he made the right decision. But because they turned him down, this corporation guy is like, right, we're going to sabotage you, and tries to stop him from doing anything. So it goes on from there, and he tries to help kind of destroy that guy's reputation. He tries to take down the bad guy because he's obviously doing shady dealings and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, the story's pretty cliche. It's kind of a usual kind of underdog sports movie, but this film is all about the style. It is eye-popping. It is so colorful and so manic, and it blew my. I love this film.
It's so good.
Also, I just kind of loved how wholesome it is.
Yeah,
it's so. I think that's what put people off when it came out, because it was a bit of a disaster when it came out, considering how much it cost. But it's on the surface, yes, you could say it's super cheesy, but it's meant to be. It's going. It's harking back to the Speed Racer cartoon. It's trying to be ultra cheesy, but it works for me. It was just so much fun and so entertaining. The only thing is almost the exact same problem that I had with Stalag 17. It's like Stalag 17. This also has two kind of comic relief characters that I didn't like, and that's his little brother. He's I've forgotten his name, but the Speed Racer's got a little brother, and he has a pet monkey who's like another brother. And those guys, I mean, the monkey's fine, but I don't know, the little kid he just annoyed me, and his scenes could have gone. I mean, I get, it's part of the kind of goofy, kind of family friendly charm, but I don't know, I just found her a bit annoying. But elsewhere, I was totally on board with it. I was just big grin on my face, glued to the screen. I loved it. And on Blu-ray, it wasn't a perfect Blu-ray. This some of the reds, it struggles on the reds sometimes. You get these kind of jaggies on the reds. Yeah. But other than those reds, it's still pretty damn spectacular.
I'm waiting. I'm praying even that we get a 4K for that, because it's like one of the few Wachowski titles that we don't have yet. I mean, obviously there's like Cloud Atlas, but like all the other stuff, like Bound just got a 4K from Criterion. The Matrix films obviously have them, and some of the newer stuff too. But like that film is like prime for like HDR or something like that, especially with the colors and everything. Like even if it was an upscale, I wouldn't care so much, just to make those colors pop even more.
I was about to say, I guess it might have been shot on HD, so
that's what I was thinking.
But but if anything needs an up, oh god, I couldn't imagine how amazing it'd look on 4K.
You know what? I'm gonna place a crazy bet, but I have like absolutely no knowledge on if this is happening. This is just a wild card, but I'm gonna say it. Maybe Arrow will release it because they have that Warner Bros. Deal. I feel like Arrow could probably do that, even if it was just a snazzy Blu-ray with like not an upscale, like a remastered Blu-ray. I'd buy that day one. Like I really feel like that film has like garnered such a cult audience over the past 5-10 years or something. Like a lot of, because I know, like you were saying, when it came out, it was a huge disaster, huge flop. And again, it was a follow-up to The Matrix. Everyone was like, whoa, what are they going to do next? And then it's a family like adventure movie essentially. And it's like, oh no,
it's like the polar opposite of Matrix. I mean, there's still some fight scenes and stuff in there, and it's still very stylish, but it's a totally different style. Which is amazing. I think I'm really glad they did that. I think it was a good move.
100%. Yeah, it's why I love and like really respect the Wachowskis so much as filmmakers, because they're uncompromising. They're never going to like cater to what somebody else wants. And like out of all of the films, I haven't seen Cloud Atlas yet. That's the only one I haven't seen. But out of all of the films I've seen from them, they never stop. Like they never stop, and they're like, okay, we're gonna make it more studio friendly or something. And even if that sometimes is to the detriment of the films, like I'm not a huge Matrix. The third one, Revolutions, Revolutions or something. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I admire it. I admire that they made like a huge blockbuster that is just kind of nonsense, but they were having a blast with it. And I see why people don't like Speed Racer because again, it's like a lot more family oriented, and again, it is corny and cheesy. But like you said, that's a charm. It's harking back to these like Saturday morning cartoons, the original cartoon and the anime and all of that stuff. And I don't know. I think as a stylistic experience, as a stylish experience, or whatever you want to call it, aesthetic experience. There we go. It's like one of the best like blockbusters of the past 20 years. It's been been 20 years now. It was like 2006 or
Yeah.
7, right?
Crazy.
Yeah. Oh, but it's great. I'm so glad to hear you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I can remember I skipped it at the cinema. I just because the reviews were a bit dodgy, and I was just,
Yeah.
I was a bit like it looked a bit cheesy. But I really wish I had gone to see it. But yeah, it was the wrong time. I was like in my 20s. I was like, oh, it's not cool enough. But no, yeah, but yeah, I'm glad I finally watched it. 'Cause that was awesome. Next up was the Ballad of Cable Hogue.
Ooh, okay.
So yeah, this is a Sam Peckinpah film. But it's very different from most You think of Sam Peckinpah, you think ultra violence, super cool. But this is kind of a romantic comedy western.
Okay.
Yeah, it stars Jason Robards as Cable Hogue, and he is a man. He's out in the desert with his mule, and two guys screw him over, steal his mule, leave him out in the desert to die. But without any water, but he accidentally finds water in the middle of the desert. And he realizes this water that he's found is right next to the stagecoach trail, like the road. It's not really a road in those days, just kind of a bit of a trail. And so he sets up shop. He builds a little kind of rest stop there to make some money. And then when he goes into town to get his stake his claim and things like that, there's a local town. He meets Stella Stevens, that's the actress name, who's called Hildy, and he falls for her. She's a prostitute, but he totally falls for her, and their kind of relationship goes from there. And also, in the meantime, he also befriends a very suspect preacher played by David Warner. And this preacher, I say he's a preacher, but he's never quite sure if he actually is a preacher. He's got the kind of dog collar on, but he switches it round when he doesn't want it. And he's got an eye for the ladies. And he goes into town and he falls for the wife of some guy in town. But he goes on from there. And it's an odd little film. It doesn't always work. That first maybe half an hour, I was really digging it. I thought it works quite well as kind of satire. At least how it first started out, it felt very much like a satire of the American dream, the kind of way he was trying to profit from this water and all this kind of stuff. But it kind of loses its way because it throws a lot in when it starts to get into the romance. And the romance is well done. Like the performances of Jason Robards and Stella Davis, Stevens, sorry. They have chemistry. They're a very likable kind of couple. It's kind of interesting where their relationship goes. But I don't know, it just didn't quite gel for me. And there's a couple of kind of dated bits in there. Some of the kind of although the kind of treatment of the Hildy character as a prostitute and stuff like that is quite well done. I mean, there's a lot of people call Sam Peckinpah, they kind of say he's very misogynistic, and to be honest, Hildy's a very strong character here, an interesting character, so it doesn't really play water in that aspect. But there are a few kind of gags and a few bits here and there that are a bit tasteless sort of these days, that are a bit questionable. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm going to say it's the 70s. It's a different time.
Yeah.
But there's a few moments that don't settle brilliantly. And also there's a couple of the kind of the humor doesn't always work. There's a lot of sped up bits, and I hate that's the the worst brand of kind of humor for me is speeding up, kind of Keystone Cops thing. No, I just didn't like those bits at all. So it's a real mixed bag, but when it works, it's really good. Like, as I say, the performances are strong. David Warner's really good as well. The performances are strong, and it has, when it goes to the satire, I really enjoyed it. But overall, didn't 100% work. But it's worth a watch. It's very interesting, especially if you want to see something different from Sam Peckinpah. It's very miles away from the Wild Bunch. Yeah, so that was an interesting one. So, have you seen it at all?
No. The only Peckinpah film I've seen is, I hope it's right. I am, yes.
Bring Me the Head.
Yeah, Bring Me the Head. Yes, I've seen Bring Me the Head, and I need to revisit it because the first time I watched it, I was like, this is probably not the best starting point. I don't
It's quite
think.
epic, yeah.
Yeah, because I need to see. He did the Wild Bunch, right?
You've got to see the Wild
Yeah, I
Bunch.
need to see that.
It's
I've got the
so
Blu-ray.
good.
I've heard amazing things,
Yeah.
so I need to check that out. But yeah, no, I'm another like director. I've got like a huge kind of blind spot for that I really need to start like.
I
digging
still, there's a few of his that I've not seen that I should have actually. I still haven't seen The Getaway. I've heard that's very good.
Oh yeah, I've heard The Getaway. I was reading Tarantino's book that he wrote a few years ago, where he kind of like details his like film like film viewing experiences in the 70s and everything that really got him into film. And there's a chapter dedicated to The Getaway being one of those films. I think he also wrote a chapter on The Wild Bunch too. But how he described The Getaway, I was like, this sounds amazing. I need to watch this.
Yeah. It's another one I've got on DVD somewhere, I think, in some kind of box set or something. But yeah, I need to dig that out. Definitely.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Cool. So next from these kind of classics, I went a bit more a bit more wild and fun, and I went for Bubba Ho-Tep.
Oh, I've always wanted to see this. I'm excited to hear what you thought.
I really wanted to watch this mainly because I've just finished reading Bruce Campbell's autobiography, the If Chins Could Kill, and I really enjoyed it.
That's an amazing title.
It's a really good book. I'd definitely recommend it. There's a lot about the making of Evil Dead in there, the first one in particular, which is brilliant. But that made me want to watch Bubba Ho-Tep. It reminded me that I've got it and haven't seen it. Yeah, Bubba Ho-Tep. So it's about it's the weirdest concept ever. It's about basically Elvis is living in he's old and he's living in a retirement home, but he's changed his identity, obviously because he's supposed to be dead. But it tells the backstory of what happened. Supposedly, he swapped identities with an Elvis impersonator, and kind of lived as an Elvis impersonator for the rest of his life because he didn't want to. He's got fed up with the fame. But anyway, now he's in this nursing home. He's got a problem with his downstairs kind of area, which it makes way too much of a deal about, which is a bit weird. And and what's happening is there is some kind of strange. There's a strange kind of old Egyptian mummy. Not quite a mummy, but some weird Egyptian person, like a who keeps appearing at night alongside these kind of creepy scarab beetle things, killing off the residents of the retirement home that he's the retirement home that he's living in. And he enlists the help of a man who claims he's JFK, even though he's played by Ozzie Davis, who is black. But he says, "Oh no, I got my skin dyed to protect my identity," and all this kind of stuff. So it's all these wacky people who everyone at the retirement home assumes they're just crazy. And Ozzie Davis, you're never quite sure. You kind of assume he is crazy, but I don't know. There's some little hints that maybe he is JFK. But it actually tells the backstory for the Elvis character that supposedly he's actually Elvis. But anyway, so they join forces to try and stop this weird Egyptian pharaoh guy. And from killing all the residents in the old people's home. And it's directed by Don Coscarelli. I can never pronounce it.
The Phantasm guy?
Yeah, famous for Phantasm.
Yeah.
So I was really excited about watching this. And I must admit, I admired how unique and out there and bonkers this film was a lot. And Bruce Campbell and Ozzie Davis are a lot of fun as the leads. But the whole film, it feels a little half-hearted. Like it didn't really, like, it's not really that. It's like a horror comedy, which I love horror comedies, but it was never scary really at all, and the jokes didn't quite hit for me. There's a couple of moments that did, but it's a bit base. Like I just didn't quite work. It's not terrible. I enjoyed it. Like, it's more of a 3 out of 5 kind of thing. It was fun.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it just I was really hoping for more. I was hoping to be a real crazy kind of blast.
Yeah.
And it's just, although it's full of unique ideas, I don't think that they're quite pulled off. It's I was a bit disappointed.
That's a shame, because like as you were describing it, I was like, this might be the best premise I've ever heard for a film. So I'll have to check that out eventually, because I know there's like did Shout release it on 4K recently, and there's loads of like
Maybe
collector's editions and stuff of the film. So which version did you watch, by the way?
Well, I just had it's an American DVD import. It's actually a friend of mine bought it, and I ended up getting it for some reason. I think he was getting rid of his DVDs, and I said I'll have that. So yeah, it's someone else's really, but yeah, it's a US region 1 DVD.
Okay. Yeah.
Got loads of extras on it though. I'm looking forward to the commentaries and things. It's one of these films that even if the film was a bit disappointing, I can't wait. Bruce Campbell's commentaries are always brilliant. So
they're amazing.
Looking forward to listening to that.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. The next film is a biggie. This is a funny one because I had this on VHS for quite a long time and never watched it. But I bought it on DVD very recently. I mean, like a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. Partly because it came up in this list, and I thought, actually, I don't want to watch it on VHS. And that is a better tomorrow. Yeah, as I can say, you might ask, why didn't you get it on Blu-ray? You can't get it on Blu-ray, unfortunately. So yeah, I finally watched it because I'm a big, you know that I'm a big East Asian cinema fan.
Yes,
big action fan, and The Killer and Hard Boiled are two of my favorite films, favorite action films. And I've never seen A Better Tomorrow. This is the film that put John Woo on the map. It wasn't his first film by a long shot, but this was the first of his kind of heroic bloodshed films that was massive, and it kickstarted. It also kind of made Chow Yun-fat a star. He'd been doing films for a decade or so before then. He'd done some well-regarded films, but not very successful films. I think he was more successful on TV earlier on, but this was when he became massive and when John Woo became massive. And I've never got around to seeing it. As I say, I only had a dodgy VHS copy. But I imported a American DVD which has A Better Tomorrow 1 and 2. I didn't install the first one though. The 2 is supposed to be really good too. And yeah, it's basically it's quite a classic kind of Hong Kong gangster movie tale of brotherhood and loyalty and all this kind of stuff. These friends, 2 of them brothers as well. One of them gets put in prison, and one of them becomes a kind of the big boss of the kind of gangsters. One of them, Chow Yun-fat, ends up getting injured. His leg gets messed up. He's had to walk with like a splint. And then the other one, who's the brother of the guy gets put in prison, ends up becoming a cop. And so you've got this kind of interesting relationship and all this kind of. You mainly focus on the one who went to prison. Is kind of the main guy, but it jumps around a bit, and he's trying to kind of sort everything out. And it goes on from there. And this, yeah, I can see why this is so big. It is awesome. It's really, really good. It's a groundbreaking film as well. As I say, it really got the heroic bloodshed films started, and you can see this as a template. I mean, it's easy to see the film as being a little bit cliched now, but you've got to kind of appreciate that a lot of films have ripped it off. I mean, a lot of the kind of the ideas you could say are maybe borrowed from the kind of Japanese cinema, from the Japanese Yakuza films, or from the Ninki Aiga and stuff like that. But this is kind of definitely got that genre stamp on it as well to kind of set it apart from that. You've got it's maybe not quite as much kind of not quite as stylized as like The Killer and Hard Boiled and things, but it still is. There's still slow motion in there. Try to think. I'm pretty sure there are some birds in there. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say I've already done.
but yeah, it's got awesome action scenes, loads of squibs going off everywhere. But I think what got me was just the whole kind of brotherhood theme and stuff like that. It's very over the top in the kind of we mentioned this earlier, a lot of Hong Kong films overbake the drama a little bit, but in the right circumstances, and definitely in this film, it worked for me. Like it really worked for me. I was really on board with this kind of it really close bond between these kind of brothers and friends and things, and it makes for grand drama. It's operatic, I think is the word, especially with the kind of with the elaborate kind of action set pieces. It is like violent opera without the music. and it is awesome. I'm glad I've finally seen it, and I'm eager to get part 2 watched now. It's just such a shame these films can't get the release they deserve, because
have you heard about the reason why these films are like never probably going to get official Blu-rays?
I've heard different bits and pieces, but I'm not sure. But
It's like, from what I've heard, the rights of the films, like from this era of Wu's career, were financed by a big casino company, and they hold the rights, and they're like, we're not parting with these for anybody, and they own like the worldwide rights. So it's not like they can't get like a Blu-ray out in Germany or something. And if it is, it's probably a bootleg or something, you know. And it's just like they won't let go of these films, and it makes me really sad because like I wanna check out Hard Boiled, I want to check out like The Killer, but outside of like DVDs and stuff, I want to see them in HD because I imagine they'd look amazing. And I know Wu's like he's remaking The Killer, but it's like a streaming movie.
Yeah, no, it won't be the same. It won't be the same.
No.
It's older guy now. He won't have that same kind of.
No. Did you see his film last year, the Silent Night?
No, I didn't get to see. I didn't get round to that one. No,
I thought it was okay. It's nowhere near on the same level as like his. From what I've heard are his greats. I've only seen some of the. I've seen like Mission Impossible 2 and Face Off, and I don't mind. Where is it? I can't see it. The one that 88 Films released. Crap, what was it? Oh, what was it called?
Well, he did it. Hero Shed No Tears.
Yeah, Hero Shed No Tears. That's the one. Yeah, I
watched that one yet.
I didn't hate it. I've heard like because I watched some of the bonus features and read up on it. I think there's like a booklet included as well. And he like disowned it, and it was kind of released without his permission. They like re-edited the film and everything. But the seeds of Wu are in there, and there's some great stuff in there. There's actually a great bonus feature on that Blu-ray. Yeah, no, there it is. I was completely missing. Yeah, the 88 Films release. There's a bonus feature from. Oh, what's his name? Brandon Bentley. I think he was on the Bruce Lee box set. Right? I think he did some bonus features for that. And he does like a 14-minute video. There's like a 14-minute essay, bonus feature, whatever you want to call it, where he examines the differences between the work print and what came out, and like it's like, oh, this is what the studio will like basically cut together against his original version. And I'm like, I can tell the differences, and it's clear that this is like not a particularly good movie, but I think it's decent. I think it's a lot better than people give it like credit for.
I really enjoyed those two martial arts ones he did with the Eureka release. It was Hand of Death and I can't remember what the other one is. I really enjoyed those. I think they're great.
For Chivalry.
Yeah, especially that. Yeah, I enjoyed those a lot.
Yeah, I need to see those.
What I do, I actually have got the dodgy Hong Kong Rescue.
The Blu-rays.
The dodgy. Very wrong. I've not watched them yet, to be honest. I got them not too long ago, but I must check those out just to see, because it's something. I know they're illegal or they're wrong, but
they're never going to get official release.
But if they're never going to get an official release, I was like, I don't care. I want to watch them.
I assume you own like Hard Boiled on DVD or something. Like
I do, yeah. I've got them all.
Yeah.
I think The Killer I've only got on VHS, but Hard Boiled I've got that. I got that on DVD.
Yeah, that guy, the Hong Kong Rescue guy. I've debated at times ordering some of those, but I've heard some like horror stories from people.
Oh, you'll never get them now. I think they're shut down now. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, have they? Oh,
I think so. He's not done anything for a while. I definitely wouldn't order for him now.
But I heard a few years ago people were ordering and they were waiting like 2 years for the Blu-rays, and I'm like,
well, what I just, because I'd heard those stories. When I got them, I just paid for the digital versions, and because I've got a Blu-ray, but I just burnt my own. Yeah. I probably shouldn't be admitting to all this. Who cares? Who's listening? I didn't make them, but I've got those to look forward to at some point. Who knows what they are? I had a little look at them, and from what I remember skimming through, they certainly don't look as kind of nice as Eureka or Arrow or something like that.
Yeah,
but they don't look too bad. I mean, they're definitely. They're better than the DVDs. I think they're probably just upscaled from DVDs, to be honest.
Yeah. I think bootlegs are just like a really interesting kind of like culture, because like so many are just like I'd never like in a million years buy them. But there's some examples like the John Woo films from this era, and like until recently something like True Lies, and I'd argue that this is probably gonna be contentious, but based on reviews I've seen, I'd argue that the Spanish bootleg Blu-ray of True Lies is probably the best way to watch the film.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes, and there's like the other thing you can argue for is against there's been a lot of Star Wars releases, like
Yes,
bootlegs that have got the original versions and all that kind of stuff. And I must admit, like, because I don't usually, I very, very rarely get any bootleg stuff.
Yeah,
but one, I did get a load of bootlegs a long time ago, when I was probably in the early 2000s. But it was when I first discovered Studio Ghibli, when Princess Mononoke came out. And then Spirited Away came out, and I was just like, whoa, these are amazing. But at that time, or at least before Spirited Away came out, you couldn't really get hold of these films other than Princess Mononoke on any format. So I did end up pirating a lot of the Studio Ghibli films. So as I say, it's sometimes like that, there just wasn't much choice. I mean, you could import them from Japan, but the Japanese DVDs cost a fortune back then. I think they still do. And I was a struggling student, as like all I could afford was these dodgy kind of and sometimes needs must.
Yeah, and there's also the fear, especially when it's like a foreign language film or something, if it doesn't have English subtitles, then you're kind of like out of luck there too. But like I feel like nowadays it's so easy because like all these labels, like if something doesn't have a release, like if there's a film that like doesn't have a release over here, there's a good chance that someone in Germany, someone in America, someone in like any of these other countries has released like a snazzy version nowadays. Like because we've got so many, like we were talking earlier about like Severin, and you were talking about Umbrella, and all of these different companies that are releasing like the films that have like never even made it to Blu-ray sometimes, or like, and they'll release like a snazzy 4K version of it or something. So we're living in like the best era for like these kind of I don't even want to say forgotten films necessarily, just like films that haven't been given their due on like physical media outside of like a bare bones release.
And that's why I really like some of the labels like Radiance, which are really digging into avenues I've never heard of, but they're curating them really well. So they're picking films that I'm rarely disappointed. Like I've been covering a lot of them, and they're just always worth watching. It's getting to a stage where I'll pretty much be happy to blind buy anything they release because they're always interesting. So cool. Right, I'm going to move on. I've got this is going to go on forever, this show, but never mind. Okay, this next one is a biggie. So this is another film that was a few of the films I've picked were from like the BFI's and the Sight and Sound's top 100 films ever lists, and that is Le Grande Illusion, or the Grand Illusion, I guess it is. Okay. So yeah, this in the past, I don't think it actually ranked that high this time, but in previous polls, it's been well up there several times as one of the greatest films of all time. I've never seen it. It's by Jean Renoir, and funnily enough, it's another prisoner of war film. Only this time it's World War One. And interestingly, the film was released only about 2 years before World War II, so it's quite an interesting period in time to be releasing this. And it's just about a group of prisoners in a camp, and kind of telling their story and going on from there. And Jean Renoir, I've seen Le Règle du Jeu, which I reviewed not too long ago, and that's one of these films that I've seen it a few times, and the first couple of times I liked it, but I didn't quite get it. I think I was a bit young when I watched it. I watched it again recently. It's like, because that's another film that's been that used to always be the top of the Sight and Sound list, or at least top 3. And what my recent rewatch on Blu-ray, the BFI Blu-ray of that, I loved it. I thought it was incredible. And I've seen The River by him as well, which was visually amazing, but it didn't quite hit me quite like the others. But Le Grande Illusion was up there with Le Règle du Jeu. This was a beautiful film. It's elegantly directed. It's thematically rich. There's kind of a lot going on there, and it's one of the most kind of humane films you can get, and that's kind of what makes this film quite interesting. Because I mean, as I say, it was really interesting watching after Stalag 17. Stalag 17, as I say, was quite interesting how it mixed. It's got this kind of the setting is potentially very dark and grim, but it's got humor in there. Well, this again, the setting is potentially very dark and grim, but it does have some humor in there, but also it's surprisingly gentle and kind of nice film. Like and that's what the film's all about, really. It's very interesting. Like some people might claim, I guess you could get the wrong idea watching this film and maybe think it's too sentimental. You could easily argue that, saying that it's not showing the kind of brutality of what happened in these prison camps. But it's not really about that. The whole idea of the film is kind of showing how both sides of the conflict are just human. They're people, and they can get on with each other as equally as fighting each other. They're just kind of following their orders, or they're just doing their thing. And it's a really kind of beautiful ode to humanity, and it's so beautifully made. It's hard to kind of explain how there's a lot of kind of John Renoir is very good at kind of his framing is kind of very careful, but not overly careful as to look very constructed. It's not like Wes Anderson where everything's symmetrical and stuff, but you can tell he's put a lot of thought into kind of framing subjects. And there's movement in there. There's some graceful movement in there, movement within frame as well as the camera. And it's just a stunning film. And as I say, it's just surprisingly, because I kind of put off watching it. I thought, war film, it's going to be a bit grim. It's going to be the usual. It really isn't. Like it's really surprising the kind of directions it took, and it's very moving. It kind of has quite the final act changes the setting quite a lot, and it changes the whole kind of vibe of the film as well. I don't really want to give anything away, but it's a stunning film. And I watched who released that? I'm trying to remember now, but it is Studio Canal. Sorry, it's a Studio Canal release. It looks incredible. The Blu-ray looks amazing.
Studio Canal are usually great for that. Like I can't remember many like instances of their titles where they kind of look nap on Blu-ray or like 4K or anything.
Especially the French films. It's a French company. I think I'm pretty sure it is. And so they tend to do an amazing job of these classics.
No, they're amazing. I'm really glad that they kind of have that partnership with I say partnership, but they helped finance a lot of like the Lynch films of that era because they're like re-releasing them now on like 4K and Blu-ray, and like I'd argue like The Elephant Man is probably one of the best 4Ks visually, which sounds crazy because most people are like, HDR, but like it helps so much with like the blacks and everything. And like I think black and white films on 4K are so underrated. No one talks about them, but they look arguably better than like a lot of like color films. Studio Canal are great. So if they released it, I'm like, this is gonna be good.
Cool. Like the next film we watched, this is when I went off list. Like everything else so far had been on the list. People had recommended it. This time, my brother came round for the evening and wanted to watch something, and he wasn't too enamored by some of my list choices. So we watched Gamera. We watched the Gamera Guardian of the Universe.
Oh my god!
The first of the is it the Heisei era? The more modern era.
Before you get into your thoughts on the film, please tell me you at least took a little peek at the UK dub that I've mentioned before.
Oh, I didn't know.
You're right.
That one.
If you have time, like later tonight or whenever you're next free, please just pop that disc in and just watch the opening 5 minutes of the film, or go to skip to any of the set pieces in the film with the UK dub. It is one of the greatest things I've ever heard in my entire life. If you're not aware, they add techno music to all of the film. It's so funny.
I totally forgot about that. I do remember you talking about that.
It's amazing. I will admit, and this is like awful, I've seen every Gamera film. That's the only one I haven't seen in its original language, and I kind of do it out of principle because I'm like, I grew up with this awful dub, and I feel like if I watch it and I notice that this is actually a great film, I'm gonna lose that charm of a really bad dub. But come on, I'm so excited.
But I really enjoyed it. It's a good, solid. It's a classic kaiju film. It never really surprises me. Like it's pretty stereotypical kaiju fare, but it just gets every beat just right. It just does it right. Everything is spot on, and it just kind of sails along. It's loads of fun. The kaiju destruction is awesome.
It's amazing.
Loads of fire explosions. The bit with the power station, they just keep blowing it up for so many explosions.
Yes, like right at the end. Exactly. So good.
I had a lot of fun with it. As I say, I don't think it did. I don't know if it did enough new to kind of grab me and be like, oh, that's my favorite kaiju I've seen. Because I'm quite new to the genre. It's only been the last few years I've been really digging into it, but I'm really enjoying it. But it's just a really solid first-rate kind of example of the genre. Yeah.
Sorry, no, continue.
I say I've heard the rest of that trilogy is supposed to be really good as well. So
it kind of gets better as they go on, which is really, really rare for a trilogy. I mean, I obviously I have a weird experience with that first film. Like I love it, but not necessarily for the reasons everyone else does. I love it because I'm like, this dub just transforms it into the funniest thing ever. But I absolutely love the scale of it. I love everyone makes fun nowadays because obviously all of the kaiju stuff that's coming out nowadays, very CG, huge monsters and everything. But I have such a strong admiration for the guy in a suit type stuff, and I think especially in this, there's some amazing sequences. The whole final 20 minutes of this film are just absolutely bonkers. I love when Gyaos, the big bird creature, he's on the Eiffel Tower or something along the lines. It's an Eiffel
Tokyo Tower, I think.
Tokyo Tower. Sorry, I don't know why I said Eiffel Tower. That's terrible. I was
it looks very similar.
If Gamera was in France, that would be very funny. But the Tokyo Tower, and he's just towering above it after he's unleashed carnage, and that's maybe one of my favorite visuals in any kaiju film ever.
There's some really nice shots out there. They make nice use of the sunset and kind of golden hour and stuff. There's some really beautiful shots in there for a kaiju. Yeah,
it's gorgeous. But I will say definitely check out the next few films in the franchise because it just gets better and better. And even though I'll always have a soft spot for that original Guardian of the Universe, just because it's got the funniest dub known to mankind. The trilogy itself is great, and I really I forget the actress's name, but she's the girl in it who has the connection with him.
Yeah.
Do you know who that is? Because I might know. Right. I forget her name, but she's the daughter of Steven Seagal.
What?
I'm not kidding. I swear.
That's crazy.
She's Steven Seagal's daughter, and I'm I'm just so amused by that. I can't remember how I even found that out. I think I might have just been on the Wikipedia page around the time the Arrow box set came out, and I was like, oh, what else has this woman been in? And it's oh, she's Steven Seagal's daughter. She's good in the film, and excited to hear what you think of the sequels. Do you have the Arrow set?
I've got the separate ones that are.
Yes.
You see one, the other one's upstairs because I need to get the special features off it. But I've got the two separate ones rather than the big one. I've seen the first. I've seen the very first Gamera film, the very first one.
Yes.
A while ago on the. I used to have the Mill Creek DVD set. And that was fun. It's all right. It's nice. It's not my favorite, but it was all right.
I will say when you're going through the Showa era stuff, the 8 films in that first box set, it's just a lesser version of a lot of those Godzilla sequels. I'm not going to argue that any of them are particularly good because I don't think they are, but they're charming if you can just kind of stomach they've got similar to a lot of the Godzilla sequels. There's they focus a lot on kids having an adventure, and then the kaiju stuff's going on in the background and stuff. And some are better than others, but the good thing about the Arrow sets is most of them have alternate cuts and all of this crazy stuff where I think. It's the third or fourth film in the set has 3 different versions of the film or something, and it's a really great collection for some kind of naff films that are moderately entertaining.
Cool. I will definitely checking more of those out.
Cool.
The next one. So I went back to the list. And I went for. I wanted to watch a documentary, and although this is questionably a documentary.
I know what you're talking about.
I watched F for Fake. So this is Orson Welles. It's probably his last great film. From what I gather and what I've seen of his films. It's a fascinating maybe documentary. It's hard to tell about a world famous art forger, and also a guy who famously faked an autobiography of Howard Hughes, and it talks about how their lives intermingle, but it goes off on a lot of tangents and interesting things just about fakery in general and about forgery and the kind of the nature of film as being fictitious, even if it's a documentary. And it was brilliant. It's really good. The biggest thing for me was just how modern it felt. It felt way ahead of its time. because it's so fast paced and it's visually interesting, and it's so kind of clever and unique. Like it felt like a modern documentary. It felt like something that had been made 10 years ago or something.
I'd argue that it might be the first ever video essay. Like, it kind of feels like a video essay, you know, in terms of like when you're watching something and it's like it's not necessarily like, because like you said, is it really a documentary? Like when you get these like really big like kind of I don't know, exhaustive pieces on like a second sight disc or something, where it's like a 50-minute 60-minute overview of the film and its themes and like how these things interlink. It's like I kind of see F the Fake as like it's like Orson Welles like starting the video essay trend in a way. It's a wild
film. Yeah, well,
anyway.
I think for me the reason, as I say, it's not sure if it's a documentary is because you're never quite sure if what he's telling the truth or not. And like at the end he kind of says he kind of. Well, it's not mega. That's the only thing I'd say against. Well, maybe not against the film. It's part of its charm as well. I found it kind of dizzying. It's so fast paced.
Yes,
it's so crazy.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I was quite often lost. I was like, I don't really know what's going on, but I can't stop watching it. And like at the end, I think he says something like that the first hour is true, and then the last half hour has been total nonsense or something. I think something like that. And it's just so you're never quite sure what to believe, which makes it just it's a real mess with your head kind of movie, but I enjoyed it a great deal. So another classic crossed off the list, which is good.
Orson Welles is like, that might be the most like Orson Welles film of all time. Like, he's so center stage, which is so funny because you think of like Citizen Kane and he's like the lead in that, but like whenever I think of Orson Welles now, I always think of F the Fake. I think of him like it's been a few years since I've watched it, so correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't there just sequences where he's just like admiring his girlfriend at the time and he's like showing his girlfriend off?
Well, it's like there's it's other people staring at her. That's kind of the but he does make some comments as well. Yeah, he kind of watches men watching her as a big kind of thing at the start, which is I find that quite interesting. Actually, quite like that. But
he's mad. But I'm one of those people who I'm not quite the like huge Citizen Kane fan as most people, but I kind of prefer the later era of his stuff. I wasn't in love with it, but I recently watched The Trial for the first time, Perkins. Have you seen The Trial?
Not yet. It's been one I've been desperate to see for years. I've only got it recently, but I'm desperate to see it.
It's one of those, like, I wasn't huge on it at the time. I was like, I don't know, but like it's kind of stuck with me since, and I'm like, I feel like a rewatch. I'm like, yeah, no, this is gonna get the 4, maybe even like 5-star treatment. It's maybe one of the best Anthony Perkins performances, and like Welles is just like he's like a master at his craft. And even if I don't love all of his films, I can't deny that he's a versatile filmmaker, and he makes some really interesting stuff.
I can remember. Well, it wasn't recently now; it's been quite a while now. But I rewatched Touch of Evil, and I do think Touch of Evil was probably my favorite Orson Welles film. I do like Citizen Kane a lot, though, right? I do rate Citizen Kane, but Touch of Evil has flaws, mainly just the casting. But away from the casting, it's so good. It's
great things.
I adore Touch of Evil. It's just Charlton Heston's the only weak point in the film. You've just got to get past him and him playing a Mexican, which is just bizarre.
Oh, wait, what?
Yeah,
I haven't seen it, so this is like news to me.
Yeah, ignore the fact that he's playing a Mexican, which is just wrong in every way, and he's terrible. But away from that, the film is amazing. But yeah, so that's probably my favorite. Although I do love Citizen Kane. I do think it's cool. So next, another biggie, another kind of, and this is one I've been recommended many times, and often by Andy Goulding, who's been on the show and writes to the site. And that is The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. So this is a Powell and Pressburger film, and Powell and Pressburger, they did A Matter of Life and Death, which is one of my all-time favorite films. And they've done loads of amazing films, Red Shoes, Black Narcissus, all this kind of stuff. And one of them did Peeping Tom. But Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, the reason I hadn't seen this yet is mainly because it's really long. Although when I actually got around to watching it, it wasn't quite as long as I thought it'd be. It is long. It's like 2 hours and 45 minutes. It's long, but I always thought I thought it was more than 3 hours, but it wasn't. But anyway, finally got around to watching this. It is basically about the life of a kind of a career army guy who he's I say it's Colonel Blimp. He's not actually Colonel Blimp. The Colonel Blimp is I think it's some kind of comic strip or something like that, or book or something from a long time ago. But it's about this guy who eventually becomes a colonel. But you kind of watch him from his early days in the army, and he lives through. He starts off in the Boer War, but you don't actually see that. He kind of jumps just after the Boer War, and he's in the First World War. He's involved, and then he goes through to the Second World War, and he kind of follows his life, and goes on from there. And yeah, this, as I say, I am a Power and Pressburger fan, but this is amazing. Again, another 5 out of 5 one that I saw. It's hugely enjoyable. Which surprised me. I kind of, because it was quite long, and just from the title, The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, I thought, oh, war movie. Again, I was a bit like, I've watched a lot of war movies this week, and but it's not. It's surprisingly enjoyable. It's quite fun. There's a lot of humor. There's a lot of energy to the film. It really just keeps pumping and pumping for the full kind of length. It's got some excellent performances, especially. I need to look them up because I'm terrible at remembering actors' names. But yeah, Deborah Kerr, because Deborah Kerr actually might be a kind of a bit of a spoiler, but never mind. She actually kind of plays 3 characters throughout the film.
Okay.
She basically plays the love interest in 3 different stages, and she's excellent. She makes these characters. She kind of changes up a little bit for these different characters, which is nicely done. Not overdone. It's done very well. Roger Livesey. He's the main guy. He's fantastic. And then he's also matched by Anton Walbrook, who plays Anton Walbrook plays a German officer who becomes his very close friend. And that's, I should have mentioned this, the synopsis is kind of key to the film. The film is all about the relationship really between these 3 guys. You've got this you've got Clive Candy, who's the main guy, and then you've got Deborah Kerr, who plays it's hard to explain without spoiling things, but kind of love interests for different people at different times. And then Anton Walbrook is a German officer who they become friends after a kind of, it's too complicated to explain, but they end up having to have a duel together when they're younger, and they scar each other's faces, and they both end up in hospital for a long time. And when they're in hospital, they actually become really good friends. But then they separate, and obviously with the war, they're on different sides. And the film kind of, again, it's reminding me, I've had a lot of kind of interlinked films, but again, a lot like Grande Illusion. It's kind of looking at how they're both just humans, and they're good friends, even though they're on different sides of the war. And the Life and Death of Colonel Blimp is it's not just necessarily about the humanity of war. It's not quite the same as Grande Illusion, but it's got some quite interesting things to say about war. It makes some statements about a lot of the film kind of takes the mick out of the old style kind of British idea of warfare, of kind of gentlemanly warfare, how we have to follow rules, we have to be very honorable and proper. And the film kind of makes, once it gets to World War II, this film makes a statement. It's like, well, it's all well and good to be honorable, but this doesn't work in modern warfare. You've got to, war is, you need to be nasty. You need to be nasty to do anything. You can't just expect the enemy and expect everyone else to kind of just follow the rules. And but it takes this in quite an interesting way. It's a very interesting film. It's a beautifully made film. It looks gorgeous, as you'd expect from Pound Pressburger. And it was just a riot. Like it was way more entertaining than I expected. So another I don't often give 5 stars, but this week I was chucking them around, and this is another one. So yeah, absolutely fantastic.
I need to dive into some of the collabs that those 2 did, because I've only seen Peeping Tom. I watched that. I don't know if that Blu-ray, did that 4K come out this year or last year? It was in the past year or so or something. But I covered that for the site, and I immediately fell in love. I think
It's very different from their collaborations. So.
Yeah, I can imagine so, because I know how controversial that film was at the time and everything, and how it kind of like it basically ruined Powell's career. But I don't know. I really want to check like the Red Shoes out. I want to check all of these like classic films out, and I'm waiting. I think Criterion released the Red Shoes on 4K, but I might be wrong.
I would say the best start, and well, it's my favorite as well, but I would say the best start would be Matter of Life and Death.
Matter of Life and Death. Is there any easy release to access for that?
It's I think ITV or something did one in the UK, which actually it sounds like you might think that'd be bad, but actually no, the restoration is supposed to be fantastic.
Oh, okay.
I've not seen the Blu-ray. I've only seen the DVD. I've not seen it for a while. But the I've heard the restoration is very good on that. There is a Criterion. I don't know. I think it was. I have a feeling it was supposed to be released in the UK, but I don't think it ever did. But the ITV one, I think, is comparable. I don't know if it's the same. It might be the same transfer.
I'll do a bit of research, because I know ITV are really, really kind of like, if they've got a title, they're not going to license it out, from what I've heard. I'm trying to remember what other titles they have. For some reason, ITV have like Dead Ringers over here, like the Cronenberg film.
They've got quite a few of the Powell and Pressburger ones actually. In general.
Oh, yeah, but no, I'll check that out for sure, because I really, again, all these like iconic filmmakers that I just still haven't seen many films from.
So next up was Fantastic Planet. So I wanted to get some animation there. I didn't have many animated films on my list, because I think a lot of the animated films I've got are kiddie friendly, and I wanted to save those. I like watching them with the kids. But Fantastic Planet is not child friendly. So I decided to watch that. Or La Planète Sauvage, or whatever it's called, I think, on the, because I got the Eureka Blu-ray.
Yes, the Eureka one.
So this is a very unusual film. It's kind of set in this weird kind of world where there's these kind of blue creatures. I've forgotten what they're called now. But these kind of giant blue creatures with red eyes who like meditating a lot, and they keep what look like humans but really tiny, who are really tiny compared to them, and they call them oms. They kind of keep those as pets, or they're all wild oms that they're considered pests. And on this world, they get fed up of these little oms, these little mini humans, and they try to get rid of them. They try to kill them and stuff like that. And you follow one who's called Tear, and he is a pet for this young blue person. I can't remember what they're called. But he escapes. And he goes and lives with the wild oms, and he helps them because he has some of the knowledge of the blue people, and he helps them to escape and kind of get away from them and all this kind of stuff. And it goes on from there. This is it's wildly imaginative. It's really trippy and surprisingly brutal. Like I wasn't expecting. I knew it wasn't necessarily a kids' film, but it's surprisingly brutal. Like some of the treatment of the creatures, that the blue people to the oms, and also there's other creatures in this kind of weird world. So it's an absolute feast for the eyes. It's really bizarre and, as I say, really trippy. But I wasn't 100% sold on the film. That I did find the storytelling a little clunky. I found that with a few of these kind of the more kind of obscure kind of animated films from the 70s and things. They can be quite often be all about ideas and visual styles, but they don't always tell the story very well. It's a bit episodic. It does a lot in voiceover and things. It wasn't. It's a very short film, so I wouldn't say I got bored or anything like that, but it did feel a little slow. Also, the messages are a little clunky. They're not too bad. A little blunt. It was pretty obvious what it was kind of getting at. But as I say, as a visual experience and as a kind of imaginative experience, it's amazing. I'm definitely very glad I saw it, and that was on the Eureka Blu-ray.
Yes, I picked that up recently because they announced it was going out of print a few months back, I think. Right. So I was like, yeah, I'm grabbing a copy of this. I want to see it, and this is terrible. I watched like 15 minutes, and I was like, this is gorgeous. I'm not in the mood for this right now. It is, like you said, said, like it is very, very, very out there. And while I really admired like how like gorgeous and like the animations like perfect, it is gorgeous, amazing. But I was like, I need to be in the mood for this.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna revisit it soon for sure, because it's one like it's only like 79 minutes or like 80 minutes or something.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
really
think it's
short.
very long.
That's another
So,
reason why I thought, oh, it's a great one to put on. And get it all watched.
Yeah, but I
cool.
do want to check it out, because I know how like acclaimed it is and how beloved it is. So yeah, no, I'm glad to hear you liked it. But I feel like I'm probably gonna fall on that same kind of like area where I'm like, I like it, I appreciate it a lot, but some of the
I didn't
narrative,
love it. Yeah. Cool. So the next film I watched is The Black Sheep Affair. This is a film. It was released by Hong Kong Legends on DVD back in the day, and I don't have the official Hong Kong Legends one. I've got the Hong Kong Legends magazine version.
Oh, I remember those.
where you don't get any extras, you just get the film.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a kind of an action film, a Hong Kong action film. It's set in what's the name of the? I've written it down here. It's set in a kind of a fictional country of Lavernia, which is supposedly, I think it used to. There are some kind of Soviet Union kind of protests and things. I think the idea is it's supposed to have used to be part of the Soviet Union, then it separated. So yeah, and these Hong Kong police officers get sent there to I was tired. I think I've kind of forgotten why they were sent. I think they're supposed to be just the bodyguards to this ambassador. I think that's the idea. It was a bit unclear to me, or I was half asleep. But anyway, they're over there, and there's some terrorists. There's this Japanese terrorist group, and there's this crazy kind of Japanese guy who believes he's the Messiah, and he has all these followers who do anything that he asks, and they act like terrorists and start blowing everything up, basically. And it's very much kind of a pretty cheesy, pretty basic kind of terrorist action movie. It tries to get a little political at times, but not really. It's basically just about let's have bad guys shooting good guys. But the writing's pretty poor, and the storyline is pretty stupid, but the action's really good. It's got loads of action in there, and the action's good. There's kung fu, there's gunplay, explosions, stunts and stuff. It is a lot of fun. It is super, super cheesy, as I say, but if you're in the mood and you can kind of switch your brain off, it is a lot of fun. There's some really cool fights in there. I try to remember who did it. I'm not sure if it's anyone particularly mega famous. Let me look it up. But it was fun. But as I say, it's hard to come by now.
Maybe 88 will release it or something.
Yeah, maybe.
They're doing a lot of Hong Kong Legends stuff like recently, aren't they?
Yeah. So maybe. I mean, as I say, it wasn't a particularly kind of mega popular one, I don't think. It's directed by Lam Wai Lun, who I don't recognize, to be honest.
What's a film director? What's a film called again? Sorry.
The Black Sheep Affair. It's the director. He directed High Risk. Is the other film he did? Oh, he did Black. Oh no, he was assistant director on Black Cat. Sorry. But yeah, who did the choreography? That's what I want to find out. Stunts by. I know somebody famous did it. I think. Oh, I can't. I don't recognize the names. But yeah, action wise, it's a lot of fun. So if you find it somewhere on the cheap, or if it does finally get picked up by someone else, I'd recommend it. It's a fun time. Just don't expect anything super special or fresh. It's just good cheesy action.
I know.
Yeah.
I had to quickly Google when you were mentioning the name, because I was like, I've heard of that. I've heard of a director. Yes, I have. He directed a film. But I recently found out about maybe like a week or two ago, because I saw it in the Hong Kong Appreciation group on Facebook. Oh yeah. I saw it. He directed a film that was falsely attributed as being a film by Wong Jing called Satan Returns, and it's like a 7 knockoff or something.
Oh wow.
And apparently it's not very good, but it's like a category 3 film with Donnie Yen, and I'm like, I need to see this. So I'm hoping 88 pick that one up. Satan Returns is like maybe the greatest title for a film I've ever heard.
Cool. Well, I'd say if that's anything to go by, it's probably going to be fun, even if it's a bit stupid.
Yeah, I've added that one to the list. So the one that you just mentioned, yeah, the
Cool.
Black Coats, Black Sheep affair. I almost said the Black Coats daughter. I'm thinking of Boss Perkins.
Yeah. Cool. The next film, I've got 4 films left. I got to try and get through these. Get in there. It's just going to be a very long show. The next film is a rewatch. This is a film I have seen before, but not for a long time, and I haven't seen it on DVD. I think I had seen a video. Actually, I think it might have, I don't know if it was. It might have been the very first. It wasn't a weekend, but the first get together I had with Andrew and Justin, who I do the weekends with Trash with. Yeah. We used to live in Grimsby, and Andrew lived in Cleethorpes, we lived in Grimsby. We trained together doing local TV news, and he we had our very first kind of, we found out that we all like movies, and we like watching trashy movies. And I don't know if it was the very first night, but it was one of the very first nights we kind of got together and watched a load of movies. We watched Richard Stanley's Hardware.
Oh,
so yeah, I've not seen it since then, and we worked out, I think, that I met these guys almost 20 years ago, I think now. So it's a long time ago. So yeah, Hardware. So it's Richard Stanley's kind of low budget. It's a bit of a Terminator knockoff, but it's got its own personality. It's actually quite different, really, even though it has got a lot of similarities. And basically, it's set in a post-apocalyptic future. And this guy is kind of a scavenger. He goes around the desert finding scrap metal pieces, and he sells them. And he's been away for a while. He comes back, and he's found this. Well, actually, someone else finds it, and he buys it off him. But he finds this weird kind of skull kind of head. It's basically like a cyborg or an android, like a robot head. Yeah. And he also finds like a claw from it as well. And he takes that home. He doesn't sell that. He thinks it looks cool because his longtime girlfriend, who he's been away from for a long time because he's been traveling around, she likes to fix things, and she also likes to make modern art out of junk. And he gives that to her as kind of a peace offering because he's been away for so long. And she puts that into her kind of art installation thing. But obviously, this is a Terminator ripoff. What happens is it comes alive, this robot. It starts feeding power off everything, and it starts going on a killing rampage, and it goes on from there. Yeah, Hardware, as I say, I've not seen it for a long time. It's super atmospheric, especially considering it's very low budget. It does a lot with its budget. I mean, it's very dark. It's like literally very dark, but I think on purpose, probably partly for the atmosphere, but partly to hide the kind of probably quite naff kind of robot effects. But they work really well. It kind of keeps it. It never quite shows the whole thing in shot, and so they can use puppets and things like that. And it does it really effectively. It's got some really intense scenes in there. It's quite grim. It's maybe a bit too grim for my taste. It's a bit depressing, right? Pretty brutal. But as a horror film, it's really intense. It's really exciting. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It's a bit sick at times. Like there's some one of the characters is there's kind of a pervert character who's spying on the guy's girlfriend with binoculars, and he's taking pictures of her naked and all this kind of stuff. And he's really gross. Like he comes to the apartment and he's really creepy. Those bits are a bit creepy, especially after some of the allegations about family. Yeah. But if you can get past those, it's a decent kind of low budget, very atmospheric little horror cheapy.
Yeah, that's one that I've wanted to see for a long time, because I know that it was never like a confirmed, but they had like postcards and they were announcing like Arrow were gonna do like Hardware and Dust Devil, is it? I think they were gonna do those, but as soon as those allegations came out, I think James Flower or whoever was Arrow at the time was just like, yeah, they're cancelled basically, which is a shame because like I've wanted to see Hardware. Maybe I'm not like someone who wants to like support it given like what's going on, but like if I can find like a secondhand Blu-ray, how did you watch it?
I've had this DVD for a long time. That's my excuse. I've had this DVD for ages. I got the Optimum one that came out years ago. I do have Dust Devil as well. I've seen Dust Devil. Dust Devil's really good. I think Dust Devil's better than Hardware. It's a little pretentious. Hardware is a little pretentious in parts as well, but it's again, hugely atmospheric. They're both films look incredible. It has very good visual eye. Dust Devil's got this weird mystical kind of stuff going on there. It's like it's a serial killer film, but with weird, trippy, mystical stuff going on. And I guess you could argue a little bit like Longlegs, but it's got a very different vibe to Longlegs.
Yeah.
But it does have some similarities, but a very different setting. It's set out in the it's more of a it's in Australia, I think. Dust Devil, or is it? Oh, it might be South Africa because he's from South Africa. I can't remember. But yeah, that's worth watching too. Again, I don't necessarily want to support the guy, but he has made some very atmospheric films.
Yeah, I like did you see Color Out of Space from a few years ago?
I haven't seen it. No.
That's pretty good. And I will say one thing about that is Spectavision. It's Elijah Wood's production company. He does a lot of like sci-fi horror stuff. He produced one of their first Spectavision films. You know the I want to say Iranian vampire film, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they produced that, but as soon as they heard about the Richard Stanley thing, they said from now on, all proceeds are going to go to like charities combating like abuse against women, and he's not getting anything. So like, if you want to buy Color Out of Space, you're okay for that one. Like the profits aren't going to him. But yeah, no, that's a good like kind of Lovecraftian kind of low budget-ish film. A bit The Thing influenced a little bit. So if you want The Thing with Nicolas Cage, you kind of get that a bit. I'm overhyping it a little bit. It's like a free
I do have it actually. I have bought that one. I just haven't got around to watching it.
It's pretty fun, and I want to check out more of Stanley's stuff. I don't want to be like buying for brand new at least.
Yeah.
But because I've heard Hardware's good, and like you were just saying, then Dust Devil as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah. So it's also I didn't realize, or at least I forgot. A couple of things actually, just a quick mention about Hardware as well. It's got Iggy Pop doing a voiceover throughout. He's like a radio presenter, which I totally forgot about. And also there's a really quick cameo from Lemmy, which is really weird. And the soundtrack is awesome. There's loads. It's quite diverse. Like there's a score which at the beginning starts out like Paris, Texas style, like twangy slide guitar. But then there's a lot more songs influenced. There's loads of punk songs, some heavy rock songs and stuff in there.
Awesome.
And then goes all classical towards the end. So it's got the gamut. It's got a really cool soundtrack. And also it's a Christmas movie. It's set at Christmas, which I totally forgotten about, but not really. Like I wouldn't stick it on with your grandma at Christmas Day, but it's but yeah, anyway.
I'm a sucker for those. They're technically Christmas films, like Eyes Wide Shut is technically a Christmas film.
But cool. So the next film, I also part of my list. As I say, Life and Death of Colonel Blimp was on my list of long films. I wanted to watch a couple of long films because I knew I had time. But this next film was definitely a long film. It's over 3 hours, but it's one a lot of people recommended, and I've heard great things about, and that is The Right Stuff.
Right Stuff.
Yeah, so Philip Kaufman.
Oh, did he direct the Body Snatchers remake?
Yes, he did.
Yes. Okay.
He's one of the writers on Raiders of the Lost Ark as well. But yeah, it is, and it's based on the Tom Wolfe novel, and it's about the story of the space race, or at least the American side of the space race. It begins with breaking the sound barrier. It begins with Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier, and it follows Chuck Yeager throughout, even though he doesn't get involved in the space race per se, but it kind of jumps back to him, and it kind of brings him in. It's quite interesting. But then it mainly follows the astronauts, the 7 astronauts who are picked to go into space. It doesn't go as far as the moon landing. In that way, it's kind of reminding, because it reminded me of First Man in some places, but First Man is obviously more about the moon. First Man is kind of like a sequel to The Right Stuff. So it's a 3 hour. It is epic in every sense. It's long, but it takes its time. But again, this is another one of my 5 out of 5 of the week. I adored it. It's one of these films. It's long. It's not necessarily, like I say, with Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. It felt quite fast. There's loads going on. It was a lot of fun. This it felt long, but it felt like it deserved to be long, and I didn't care. I could have sat through another hour of it. It's just really captivating. It's kind of grand Hollywood filmmaking at its best, sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's just, it looks gorgeous, like it's epic. It makes great use of kind of archive footage. It really nicely blends the footage of the actors with some archive stuff really effectively, especially considering this is 1983. And again, because it's 1983, you've not got CGI, so it's using practical effects incredibly well. There's only maybe literally like 2 shots where it looks a little dated. Most of the time, because they're either using archive material or they're just using some decent kind of practical effects, it just looks seamless. And it really spends time with the characters. It really spends time with the story. It just gets everything right. It's just one of those proper, solid examples of Hollywood doing the right thing. Just like it kind of similarly to, well, it's a very different film, but in the same way, like Casablanca is one of the great Hollywood films. It's using the kind of facilities, the great kind of writers they've got, the great directors they've got, the great craftsmen, just to make something that's so well crafted that you're just kind of caught up in it. And I loved it. It's brilliant. But one of the big things though is the cast. The cast is incredible. There's so many famous people in there. A lot of them are the kind of actors who are not always kind of super famous leading actors, but they're just faces you instantly recognize. Like Sam Shepard is probably not as famous now, but he was bigger then. You've got Scott Glenn, you've got Ed Harris, you've got Dennis Quaid, you've got Fred Ward, you've got Barbara Hershey. You've got Lance Henriksen. You've got Levon Helm from the Band is it, and then who I didn't realize were in it at all, they're quite low down the list, is there's a bit of a comedy duo in Jeff Goldblum and Harry Shearer. They play these they're kind of talent scouts. They're out trying to find the astronauts, so they don't have a massive role, but they do quite a bit, and they're one of the more comical kind of characters in the film, but not too, they don't push it too far. But they're really good, and they cropped out of nowhere. I was like, is that Jeff Goldblum? Because a lot of the film they uses a lot of natural light, and there's a lot of scenes where the people are kind of silhouetted and you can't see the faces very clearly. And especially Jeff Goldblum and Harry Shearer, when they first come in, they're kind of in the shadows, but the voice, you instantly like, is that Jeff Goldblum in some kind of tiny role? And you realize he had done some films before then, but he wasn't massive yet then. So
my first like my earliest Goldblum English the first film, like the earliest role of his I've seen in a film, and it really, like, you're talking about this catching you off guard. He's in the first Death Wish and he plays one of the like assaulters.
Yes, I've seen that. Yeah.
And like I went through the franchise with my friend Brady, and like almost each film has just like a really weird character. Like Death Wish 3 has Alex Winter in as like one of the evil characters, and the second film is Lawrence Fishburne in a really early role as one of them. And I'm like, every single film just had like one of these like early in their career kind of characters, and then you watch it now and you're like, really? Like, why? Early Jeff Goldblum, he appeared in some weird stuff, but not always bad, obviously. But like, yeah, he took some interesting early roles.
Yeah. And I'm a big Spinal Tap fan, so I loved seeing Harry Shearer in there.
Oh,
and Simpsons. But I really enjoyed it. I only watched it was an old DVD I had, but I tell you what, it was a well-authored DVD. It looked good. Upscaled to HD on my projector. It looked good. There is a Blu-ray available, and there's no special features on the DVD though, so I'm tempted to get the Blu-ray just to watch, because it's the kind of thing I want to know how accurate it was. I'm really interested in how they made it. So
who released it? I'm guessing.
I think it's Warner Brothers. I think it's Warner Brothers.
Yeah, it sounds like a Warner Brothers film. I don't know why. Like sometimes you just hear the film and you're like, that has a Warner aura to it. The
DVD was one of those, those kind of weird cardboard cases that you kind of clip in. The snapper ones. I think that was Warner Brothers who used those.
Yeah, no, that was 100% Warner. Because they did like the Matrix and like the Gremlins films had those snapper cases. I remember those. Yeah.
Cool. So 2 left. I'm getting there. So next up, this is a switch around. On my list, I had a Jacques Tati film. I had Playtime, which is supposed to be incredible. I've always wanted to see it. But what I realized, like when I got the box set out, I realized I've seen the first 2 films in this set. whose names escape me, but I've seen the earliest 2 films in that set, and I realized if I would jump to Playtime, I would be missing Mon Oncle, which is in between them, and Mon Oncle is supposed to be equally as great as Playtime from everyone that I've heard. And again, this is another recommendation from Andy Goulding, who loves both of the films. So I was like, I'm not going to watch Playtime. I'm going to carry on watching these in order. So I watched Mon Oncle, or My Uncle, or it is in English. This is. I don't know if you've watched any of Jack Tattie's films, but
no, I'm aware of like
this is the first 2 are quite different. The ones that I have seen are a little different. I think he's more famous for this film and definitely for Playtime.
Yeah,
and this film is all kind of it's a satire on modern living and kind of middle class snobbery, and there's not much of a story. It's quite episodic. It's basically he plays Jacques Tati plays the Monsieur Hulot character, he plays that character in a lot of his films. He's kind of a bumbling kind of older guy who's he doesn't usually say much. His films are not silent, but almost semi-silent in ways. He kind of likes visual comedy, and it just kind of and his sister. It jumps between him and his sister's family. His sister lives in a very upper middle class family. Her husband is he's kind of a manager in this plastics firm, and they have a young son. And the young son loves his uncle, who loves Monsieur Hulot. They like to get up to mischief and all this kind of stuff. Whereas his mom and dad they have this ultra modern house that everything's electric. They've got crazy gadgets for everything. And a lot of the film is kind of taking the mick out of this, how they've got all these gadgets, but most of them don't make life any easier. They make it more complicated or just ridiculous. And also the modern design, like her garden most of the garden's little messed up jumbled squares of pebbles, but they have like paving slabs and paving like stones that you're supposed to stand on rather than the pebbles. So everyone's trying to avoid these pebbles, but the kind of paving never makes any sense. So everyone's walking around bizarre ways to get to the houses and things, and it really plays on this. It's a film that's there's a lot of recurring gags, but it's very cleverly kind of builds on and things. And a big thing about Jacques Tati, especially in this film, and from what I've heard from his next film, is he likes to use quite long takes on very wide shots. I don't think he has any close-ups in there. They're all quite wide, so the film is all about the details and following the action, and it's all very, very cleverly orchestrated. He's very famously meticulous. Like, he would take a long time to make these films and plan them. He would make sure that everything was perfect, just to get the comedy right. And it is just incredible to watch his films. It's very. Have you ever watched any of Roy Anderson's films? He did like View the Living and
no, I've got the
on the brand
one set though.
But Jacques Tati's very influential on his films. You can also see Wes Anderson's definitely got a bit of that style. They've got similar. Jacques Tati, as I say, is very careful framing and very careful production design. Although in this film it jumps a lot. The scenes in the modern house and in the factory, because he gets a job in the factory as well. There's a lot of stuff in the factory. Those are very careful. Everything's very clean. There's a lot of pastel colors and stuff, which definitely reminds me of Wes Anderson. But then it mixes that with because a lot of the film is kind of showing the differences, the ridiculousness of modernity compared to, it goes back to the old Paris and more the old style of living, and the friendly, the more wild, the kind of fun kind of side and things, and it mixes those up, and those bits are more natural looking. And it's a wonderful film. It's the best of his films I've seen so far. But I've heard a lot of people. I think this and Playtime are supposed to be his 2 absolute masterpieces, so I'm looking forward to checking out that. It's amazingly well directed, very, very stylish, but very funny. It did have me laugh out loud a few times. It's quite long. It's almost 2 hours. I think it's the only thing I'd say against it is it's quite long. I wouldn't say I was necessarily bored, but it could be maybe tighter. But it is charming. It's funny. It ends on a bit of a poignant note as well. And as I say, influential on some other filmmakers. It's definitely worth watching.
Oh,
and I
no,
watched that in the.
That's great.
Oh, I've left it upstairs, but it's the BFI box set with all his films in there.
Okay.
Which is, I think it's usually, you can usually get it pretty cheap, but it's definitely worth picking up.
Yeah, no, I'd pick that. That's Blu-ray, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'll keep an eye out for that.
That's another one where I cheated, because I've had the DVD set for a long time, but I upgraded not too long ago. Because after watching some of the films, I realized the details are very important on those films. And I think it's a film where it really benefits from Blu-ray, because especially, I think more on this film than the earlier ones I'd seen, because there's so many wide shots where it's really nice to see every little carefully planned detail on that shot. Cool. So we come to the last film. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go soon. But the last film I decided on, I wanted an action movie, I wanted some fun, I wanted something just that'd be a blast, and I went with Mr. Majestyk. So this is a Charles Bronson movie.
Okay, I'm sold. I'm sold.
Yeah, and basically it's I'm gonna look up, I'm not sure, it's someone who directed it. It was someone famous. And
is it Michael Winner?
No. Although funnily enough, my DVDs, I've put my DVDs into like one of those big zip wallets, and I opened it up and I started flicking through. I got to M and I saw a picture of Charles Bronson on the disc. There was no name of the film. It was just Charles Bronson. I was like, oh, here we go. Put it on. It started playing. It was like a Michael Winner film. I was like, I'm sure he didn't direct this. And then it was the wrong film. It was actually The Mechanic. And I almost watched that because the original Mechanic's supposed to be great too. But I was like, no. In my mind, I really want to see Mr. Majestyk. So I took it out and put the right film in. But yeah, Mr. Majestyk is a Richard Fleischer film.
Richard Fleischer. Okay.
Yes. Who's more famous for he did 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Fantastic Voyage and stuff like that. But yeah, Mr. Majestyk. I'd always heard a lot about this film. I do like Charles Bronson. He's in my favorite film of all time, Once Upon a Time in the West. But I'd always wanted to watch this in particular because the kind of central concept always sounded bizarre. And basically, Charles Bronson plays a melon farmer, and he's at the beginning of the film he's hiring some Mexican laborers to come and help him get in his melon crop. His melon crop is here. It's ready to be picked, and he's going to get his money for the year. But when he gets to his farm, there's this kind of dodgy young guy has already put his own laborers on there, and he says, "Oh yeah, I've got my laborers starting already. You pay me $140 per head or whatever, which is more than he was going to pay the Mexicans." But Charles Brosnan's like, whoa, hang on. He's like, I've already hired these people. You can't just force yourself on my land. And he gets rid of him. You realize that actually Charles Bronson, as you might expect, he's a former Marine or something like that. and he kicks this guy's ass. He's like, get out of here. He kind of beats him up and sends him on his way. Big mistake. So what happened is this guy complains to the police and says, oh, he attacked me. So the police arrest Charles Bronson, who's actually he's called Vince Majestyk. But
that's an amazing name.
Yeah. But that's why it's Mr. Majestyk. And he gets put in prison. And when he's put in prison, they get transported to another jail or whatever. But he gets on the same prison truck as a notorious gangster hitman played by Al Latieri. You might not recognize the name, but if you look him up, and if you've ever seen The Godfather, you will recognize him. He's I can't remember who he plays in The Godfather, but he's a very recognizable. You'll recognize his face as soon as you see him. But yeah, and he plays Frank Render. He's a notorious hitman. And what happens is, his gangster friends kind of attack the prison van and try to free him and get him back from prison. But what happens is Charles Bronson's having none of this because the gangsters are shooting everyone. So he takes over. He kicks the other prisoners off, but keeps the hitman who keeps Frank on the police van, and he drives off, and he goes into hiding with this criminal. And he ends up getting rid of the criminal. He tries to get him to the police, but it doesn't work. So then what happens is the criminal's pissed off now because they separate, and the criminal wants revenge. So the rest of the film is about this hitman wanting to get wanting to kill Charles Bronson. But this is Charles Bronson. You can't kill Charles Bronson easily. So the rest of the film is about Charles Bronson. Also, throughout the film, he's desperate to get back to his melons. If you played a drinking game where you drank every time melons are said in the film, you would be hospitalized. This film is obsessed with his melons. Like he's determined to get back to them because they only come around once a year, I guess, and he needs to harvest them. And the bad guy does some bad things with his melons, which really pisses off Branson. Sorry to spoil anything, but yeah. So but yeah, this film, Mr. Majestyk, I thought it was great. I think it's great. It
sounds great.
It's a 70s action movie. I love 70s action movies. I don't watch enough of them. It's got that same 70s kind of grit to it. Where the action scenes feel real. There's some really cool car stunts and stuff like that there. Lots of squibs and things like that.
Yeah.
It's just really badass, even if it's about a melon farmer. And also, I think like a lot of the 70s films as well, it spends a little more time on the character and the story. It doesn't rush. It's certainly not slow paced and like dull, but it spends enough time on the characters. Like not only with Bronson character, but the bad guys is really fleshed out and interesting and fun. Like Al Lettieri is great. I wish he'd play more kind of main bad guys instead of being a bit of a side heavy. So it's just loads of fun. It's just a really good, solid 70s action movie. So yeah, a great film to end on.
That sounds amazing.
Oh, yeah.
that sounds great. I know you've got to be off soon. I was gonna do a joke, like recommendation for what I watched.
Well, I've got like 20 minutes. You can throw it in. I'm just aware of the length of the podcast.
Yeah. Well, so I've got all these films. I've watched quite a few out of a collection in the past month. But I was going to jokingly talk about how I watched Deadpool and Wolverine. It was terrible. I don't want to waste time talking about that. So I'm going to briefly mention. And now I think I mentioned this when I was talking about like our pickups last time where we both picked some stuff up from the Vinegar Syndrome sale, and I mentioned one title. And as soon as I think it was literally a day or two after we did the podcast, I ended up watching it, and it was the film Viva Erotica, which is the film that if you don't remember, it's a film about an aspiring filmmaker who's an aspiring Hong Kong filmmaker who's had two really bad flops because he wants to make experimental like art house films. Like he wants to make like a Wong Kar-wai film or something, but like his films fail at the box office. So he's basically propositioned with the task. He's like, hey, will you direct some scuzzy category-free film? So he accepts it, even though he's very hesitant initially. Like the producers talking about the film and everything, and he's like, wow, it's like Seven if it had boobs and violence. I'm like, oh my god. And it's just like the producers just all like scuzzy and everything. But he attempts to make his own category-free film, but he's like shooting it at like low frame rates and everything to like obscure the nudity and like all of the graphic content. It's like really funny because like it's clearly obviously not going anywhere, but then after kind of working with the cast for a while and everything, he kind of comes to appreciate the category free and kind of like scuzzy, like sleazy cinema is its own form of art in its own way as well, which I think is really fun. But it's mainly a comedy. It's nothing like too serious. It's very lighthearted. It is a category free film as well because obviously given the nature of the content in the film. And yeah, there's a really funny there's a funny segment about halfway through the film where the lead characters, they've just finished like shooting for a day, like the crew I should say, and they're out at like a club one day and they notice a notorious like Hong Kong director who's like an alcoholic and he's a gambler, and it's I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Wong Jing, like the notorious filmmaker, and he's played by Anthony Wong.
Anthony Wong playing Wong Jing.
Yeah, which I was like, that's amazing casting, and he's only got one scene, but he's very fun in it. But yeah, no, it's like it's kind of a love letter to like sleazy cinema, but like it's showcased from like a very artistic perspective, which is very funny for a category free film. Like my exposure to them, again, it's stuff like Ebola Syndrome and Taxi Hunter, I think is Cat 2, but like stuff like that that's just really in your face, untold story, in your face, like graphic, and then to see like a category free film that's very meta about what it is and kind of like the process of filmmaking. Like I'm a sucker for films like that, like films about filmmaking and whatever they are. Like the Disaster Artist is pretty good, and there's so many others. I need to see. Is it Day for Night? I've heard.
Yeah, I was going to say that's
I've heard that's an amazing.
Have you ever seen Living in Oblivion? That's one of my favorites.
No.
It's hard to get hold of, I think, these days. I'm not sure. I think someone did release it though. I don't know about Blu-ray, but I think you can get it on DVD. But that's one I had on video back in the day, and that's really good.
It sounds familiar. There's so many like great examples. I'm just say that again. Sorry.
It's Steve Buscemi and also an early Peter Dinklage role as well. Ooh. A very memorable Peter Dinklage role.
Okay, I think actually now that you're mentioning this, I think Shout Factory released us a Blu-ray in the past few years. Definitely so maybe I'll have to like import that. But yeah, I'm a sucker for that kind of subgenre, and the film does it really well. It's a I can't remember what part the label this is. Kani or Canny, like Kani, like one of those. It's really, really nice. It's a really great looking Blu-ray. And I was having a look to see if it had a UK release, and it doesn't have like a Blu-ray or a DVD over here as far as I'm aware, but you can buy it on iTunes in 4K HDR, which just kind of, I was like, oh, that's really weird. So I was looking at what else the distributor who put this out released over here, and they released like the Fight Back to School trilogy, which 88 did. Yeah. So maybe this could be like an 88 films title in the future or something. But yeah, if this gets like a UK release or something, definitely pick it up. Or if you can pick up the Vinegar Syndrome disc. I don't know if it's still in print because I picked it up during the halfway to Black Friday sale when they mentioned that it was going out of print soon or something. Right, yeah. But yeah, if you can get your hands on this, it's really great, and it's one of those films that even if you haven't seen like a great deal of category free films, you can still appreciate it as long as you just have that general gist of, okay, this is what category free cinema is, and this guy does not want to make category free cinema. And yeah, no, it's really charming, really funny. Like it has some of the funniest sex scenes ever, but they're like, because like like it's gonna sound crazy. I've got to word this in a way that doesn't make me sound like a lunatic. Like if you've watched category free films, you know they're very sleazy and have like really bad like rape stuff in it and everything. And one of the big like humorous points in this film is how filming a rape scene is like really awkward when the actors are obviously like they know each other, and they're like the actor who's like perpetrating the crime in the film, he's like a loving family man, and he's bringing his kids to set all the time, and then he's like doing this, but like on screen you've got to make it as if he's like this horrible graphic monster, because of course, but like it's like kind of boiling down the filmmaking process in terms of like when we're watching something and we see a film that has like a horrific like scene like that in, we're going to be shocked if it's effective, of course, but like behind the scenes it's obviously like people are making this, they have to craft it. And I thought that was a really interesting way to like kind of dive into the art of filmmaking, because again, Anthony Wong, he's an amazing actor, but he's played some of the most despicable human beings I'd ever seen in media. But from all the interviews I've watched on these discs and everything, he's like apparently a lovely guy, and it's like that's usually the case for a lot of these people who play like sickos in films. They're just apparently like really big softies in real life.
I'm trying to think who it was. There's a famous I've seen a few films. I'm never gonna be able to figure out who it is now. But there's a guy who's in quite a few film noirs. What is the name? But there's an actor who was. This is going to sound really messed up, but he kind of became famous for hitting women on film.
No!
It just seemed to be a thing his character would do. He was always a really nasty character. He'd be like giving the backhander sort of thing. He became famous for that, but he's famously a family man. Like he's one of the few people in Hollywood that was with the same wife forever. And he was like the nicest guy ever from all accounts, but he always played these creeps, like these horrible creeps. So it is weird how people just fall into these stereotypes just because I guess just from a couple of famous roles that
No,
Would.
completely, yeah, and it's just, yeah. I mean, if you're interested in kind of like the deconstruction of
Oh,
filmmaking
definitely, yeah.
in like a meta, like I don't want to say satirical way, but like a very meta way.
Yeah.
But it's played for comedy. Like, there's obviously some dramatic beats in the film. Like, obviously, there's a plot line involving the lead character, like the director of the film, and his girlfriend, who doesn't really care so much about like the film he's making, but more so she's just like, oh, you're clearly not happy with what you're doing. Then they've got like a cute little relationship going on behind the scenes. But yeah, no, it's just a really funny film. Like, I didn't expect to laugh at like the filming of like awful sequences like that, but the film's able to portray it in a way that makes something so like serious just kind of silly. And I guess that's like probably the case for so many films. Like, we're talking about like all these films with like crazy stunts and like crazy blood squibs and everything, but I imagine like on set, like they probably just had a fun time, maybe. Like, depending on who filmed it.
Yeah, it depends. Not always, but yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, no, Viva Erotica, amazing. That's probably like my
Sounds
favorite film I've watched in the past month or so.
Cool.
Better than Deadpool and Wolverine, surprisingly. Which oh, I am. I don't want to really talk about it. I would say I didn't pay for my ticket. I was going to avoid that film, but my friend was like, "Hey, it's fun." I went to see it. It's not fun.
Oh, I'll probably give it a miss. I think there's other films I'd rather watch.
Yeah, there's so many other
There's
films.
A few, annoyingly, there's some that came and went in my local cinema. I wanted to watch In a Violent Nature, and it just came and went. It was on, but it was only on for like a week, and I was like, "Oh, I'll watch it next week," and it just went.
There is a Blu-ray coming out of that soon.
Oh, okay.
I'm interested to hear what you think of In a Violent Nature, because I know you're not a huge horror.
Not a huge horror film. I enjoy them. I enjoy certain types of horror. It depends. I think I just don't. I'm not as knowledgeable as them. I think as well. Because I mean, I was born in the early 80s, and a lot of people my age or slightly older grew up on the kind of video nasties and the not necessarily the video nasties because they were harder to come by. You had to be a bit older for that, but like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th and all this kind of stuff. But my parents were super strict, and also I just kind of I don't know. I just got into different kinds of films, and I didn't watch a lot of them. I watched a couple of the first ones and stuff. I didn't watch a lot of the sequels, and so I don't have that kind of knowledge, but I do enjoy a good horror movie. And I've watched a few, and I've friends of mine, like Justin's a big horror guy, and he dragged me along to a lot of horror film festivals. I've not been for a while, but we used to go to quite a few of those, and I used to enjoy those, but I was very squeamish. I always got nervous about certain types of, like, I'm not really into really grueling kind of nasty horror where it's just about how horrible can people like torture porny sort of stuff. I just don't enjoy it. I don't get it. It's just it's masochism for me. It's like I don't understand why people watch them. But for horror comedy, I love.
Yes.
And just kind of haunted house. I kind of like the classic haunted house kind of horror. Like, I enjoy that sort of stuff. And I do enjoy a good. I'm not a massive slasher guy. I find them a bit samey, but I do enjoy a good slasher with some top-notch kills. I'm there. I'll enjoy them.
I think you'll probably like In a Violent Nature. Like, I posted my review a few weeks ago for the site, and I like In a Violent Nature, but like my main issue with it is it doesn't. Because are you aware of like the kind of gimmick behind it and everything?
Yeah, I read your review actually.
Yeah, like it's just it doesn't commit to it as much as I hoped it would. Like, it kind of just like there'll be like a scene that's very clearly supposed to be like a 5-minute long take, and it will just cut midway through, and I'm like, at that point, just make the film 20 minutes longer so you can commit to this bit of like being in the killer's perspective, like following the killer for his perspective. But in terms of kills, there is one amazing kill that's worth the price of admission alone. Like, it is so unbelievable that there were points where I was like, okay, and then that came along and I was like, okay, and then like I think the final half of the film is very divisive for a lot of people, but I reckon I'd be interested to discuss it with you whenever you get around to checking it out.
Cool.
Because it's pretty good, and they just announced a sequel like yesterday. Wow. I don't know how that's gonna work. Well, no spoilers. It's gonna be interesting. Hopefully they can kind of build on the foundation and make something better. Cool. Because it's a good starting point.
Cool. Well, yes, I shall dig it out hopefully one of these days. Although, as we've discussed, I've got so much to watch.
Oh yeah.
Cool. Anyway, I'm gonna have to go soon. I'm afraid. My family that were away that allowed me to watch all these movies this week are coming back, and I need to go and pick them up. So, but no, yes, thanks for joining me. I know it's been very me centered.
Oh no, I was excited to hear what you've been watching, and I'm glad that there were a few that I could kind of input on a little bit,
and lots of recommendations. I'd say it's some really. I mean, I purposely watched a few like Hall of Shamer films anyway that I knew would probably be kind of proper 5-star classics. But it's good to just finally get to them and just I kind of agree with a lot of them. So yeah, great
you
stuff.
got to see Mr. Majestyk. That's all that really matters.
Yeah, it was a good way. I enjoyed that. It was a good way to end melon farming. Cool. So and next month it should be business as usual. I think with it being summer, there's lots going on. So, but I think I'll try and squeeze one at the end of August. But we'll see how things get on. I might not post this straight away. I've got to go to the train station.
Of course, yeah.
And I'm working tomorrow, but I'll get it up as soon as I can. And thanks for joining me. And
of course,
thanks for listening. Whoever's out there,
yeah,
anyone's out
listening.
there. Cool. See you later.
See you later. Bye.